Eleanor Whitmore folded the eviction notice and placed it inside her husband's Bible, not because she wanted God to ignore it, but because she could not bear for anyone else to see it. For 42 years, that little white house had held birthday cakes, bedtime prayers, arguments, forgiveness, hospital bills, Sunday dinners, and the last breath of the man she loved. Now, at 73 years old, Eleanor was about to lose the only place that still sounded like Thomas. Her children thought she was fine. Her church thought she was strong. Her neighbors thought she was private. But no one knew she had started skipping dinner so she could afford her medicine. No one knew she was behind on taxes. No one knew the roof leaked over the back bedroom. No one knew the insurance bill had come with numbers she could not pay. And no one knew that the woman who had spent her life feeding others had begun drinking tea for supper and calling it enough. Eleanor was an elderly widow living on a fixed income, trying to hold together a house, a memory, and a dignity that was quietly falling apart. Then a stranger knocked on her door, and before the week ended, that stranger would open Thomas's Bible and uncover a prayer Eleanor was not ready to answer. Eleanor Whitmore had lived in the same house for 42 years. It was not impressive from the street. The porch boards creaked. The white paint had turned dull and weathered. A crack ran near the front steps. The garden Thomas once kept so carefully had become uneven and wild around the edges. But to Eleanor, that house was not a structure. It was a witness. It had watched her children learn to walk. It had heard Thomas pray over meals when money was short. It had held laughter during Christmas mornings and silence after arguments. It had survived storms, repairs, teenage rebellion, medical bills, and the slow fading of old dreams. Thomas Whitmore had been a carpenter, a church deacon, and the kind of man who noticed broken things before anyone asked. A loose railing, a leaking roof, a neighbor's empty pantry, a single mother's cold house. He was not wealthy, but he was generous with what he had. His hands, his time, his truck, his tools, and his faith. When Thomas died 5 years earlier, Eleanor did not simply lose a husband. She lost the person who knew where every sound in the house came from. The person who could hear a pipe rattle and say, "That's nothing." The person who could place a hand on hers and make fear smaller. After his funeral, people surrounded Eleanor. Her children came often at first. Her pastor visited. Women from church brought casseroles. Neighbors checked on the gutters. Everyone said, "Call us if you need anything." Eleanor always smiled and answered, "I will." But she rarely did. She had helped others for too long to feel comfortable being the one in need. And slowly, quietly, her life became more difficult than anyone knew. The bills did not arrive all at once. That would have been easier to explain. They came like rain through a roof crack, a little at a time. A medication changed price. The property tax increased. The home insurance renewed at a higher amount. A pipe burst beneath the kitchen sink, and the repair cost more than expected. Then the back bedroom ceiling stained brown after a heavy storm. Eleanor told herself she would catch up next month. Next month became another month, then another. She cut small things first. No more bakery bread. No more new shoes. No more heating the whole house during cold mornings. Then she began skipping dinner when her stomach felt not too hungry. She stopped answering the phone during the day because she feared it might be another bill collector. Her children called every week. "Mom, how are you?" "I'm doing fine, sweetheart. Do you need anything?" No, I'm managing." She hated that word, managing. It sounded dignified. But sometimes managing meant hiding envelopes in drawers. Sometimes managing meant smiling at church while wondering how many days remained before someone came to take the house. Her pastor, Reverend Caleb, once asked her after service, "Eleanor, are you sure everything is all right?" She almost told him. The words rose to her throat. Then she saw a young family waiting behind him for prayer, and she swallowed them back down. "I'm all right, Pastor. Just tired." She was not all right. She was ashamed, and shame is a quiet jailer. It convinces people that needing help is the same as failing. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday. Eleanor stood at the mailbox longer than necessary, staring at the envelope as if delaying the opening could delay the truth. Inside the house, she sat at the kitchen table. Thomas's Bible rested near the window, the same Bible he had read in the last months of his life. Its leather cover was worn soft at the corners. The pages were marked with notes, underlines, dates, and names. Eleanor opened the envelope. The words blurred at first, then became clear enough to wound her. Eviction notice. Her hand trembled. She pressed the paper flat against the table. For a moment, she imagined calling her son, then her daughter, then the pastor. Then she imagined their faces. Concern, shock, pity, questions. Why didn't you tell us? How long has this been going on? Mom, you should have said something. She could not bear it. So she folded the paper once, then again, then placed it inside Thomas's Bible and closed the cover. Lord, she whispered, I don't know what to do. But beneath the prayer was another sentence she did not say aloud. Please do not let anyone find out. The next morning, a knock came at the door. Eleanor looked through the curtain and saw a man standing on the porch. He was in his mid-40s, neatly dressed, holding a clipboard and wearing a badge from a community housing organization. She opened the door only a few inches. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore? My name is Marcus Reed. I work with a community program that helps seniors with home safety evaluations and repairs. We received a referral about your property. Eleanor stiffened. I didn't ask for help. I understand. Sometimes referrals come from public records or neighborhood reports. I'm not interested. I'm not selling anything. That's what people say when they're selling something. Marcus smiled gently. That is fair. But Eleanor did not smile. She had seen enough stories about elderly scams to distrust a stranger at the door. Marcus stepped back respectfully. I can leave my card. You can call the office directly to verify everything. She almost closed the door. Then thunder rolled in the distance, and a drop of water fell from the porch ceiling between them. Marcus looked up, then looked back at her. Mom, he said softly, that roof needs attention. Eleanor's pride rose quickly. So do many things, I'm sure. I said I'm not interested. He nodded. I'll leave the card. As he turned, a gust of wind pushed the door wider, and Marcus caught sight of the kitchen table. Thomas's Bible was open. A small photograph had slipped from between its pages and fallen onto the floor. Marcus froze. Not politely, not curiously, completely. Eleanor noticed. What is it? He pointed with a trembling hand. May I see that picture? Eleanor wanted to refuse, but something in Marcus's face stopped her. She picked up the photograph. It was old, faded at the edges. Thomas stood in front of a small house, younger, stronger, with his toolbox in one hand. Beside him stood Eleanor, carrying a paper grocery bag, and between them was a thin little boy with frightened eyes and a coat too large for him. Eleanor remembered the day only vaguely. There had been many houses, many needs, many winters. Marcus took one step closer. That boy, he whispered. That was me. Eleanor looked from the photo to his face. You? He nodded slowly. My mother's name was Denise Reed. We lived on Maple Street. Our roof was leaking so badly that winter that water came through the ceiling into the bedroom. Eleanor's mouth opened slightly. A memory began to return. A young mother, a cold kitchen, a little boy sitting under a blanket. Thomas saying, I can patch it before the next storm. Marcus's voice broke. Your husband fixed our roof. Refused payment. You brought food every Thursday for 6 weeks. The church brought coats. My mother cried after you left because she said someone had remembered we existed. Eleanor sat down slowly. I hardly remember. I never forgot. The room became very quiet. Marcus looked around the house. The peeling paint, the water stain, the old photos, the Bible. Then he said, Mrs. Whitmore, I didn't know this was your house when I took the assignment. Eleanor looked away. I don't need charity. His answer came gently. Neither did my mother. That's why your husband called it love. The words landed harder than Eleanor expected. She folded her hands tightly. I have managed this long. Marcus looked at the table, then at the closed Bible. Maybe managing is not the same as being alone. That night, Eleanor did not sleep. Rain tapped against the windows. Somewhere near the back bedroom, water dripped into the bucket she had placed beneath the ceiling. She sat in Thomas's chair, wrapped in his old blanket, listening to the house breathe around her. She felt exposed, not because Marcus had been unkind, because he had recognized something she had tried to bury. Need. She had spent years giving food, prayers, rides, money, time, and help, without asking who deserved it. But now that she needed help, pride called it shame. She stood and walked to the kitchen table. Thomas's Bible was still there. Inside it, the eviction notice waited like a secret too heavy for paper. She opened the Bible to remove it, perhaps to hide it somewhere else. But when she lifted the page, something slipped loose from the back cover. A folded note. Thomas's handwriting. She knew it immediately, uneven near the end. From when his hands had weakened, Eleanor sat down. The note was dated just 3 months before he died. Lord, it began. You know Eleanor's heart. She will feed a stranger before she admits she is hungry. She will pray for others before she lets anyone pray for her. If one day I am gone and she is too proud to ask for help, send someone who remembers that we once helped them. Eleanor stopped reading. Her hand covered her mouth. Thomas had known. He had known her strength could become a wall. He had known that the same hands that opened the door to others might lock it when love came back to her. She kept reading. Teach her that receiving is not disgrace. Teach her that weakness is not failure. Teach her that the grace we gave was never ours to own. It came from you, and it may return to her by another road. Eleanor began to cry. Not softly, not politely. She cried with the exhaustion of a woman who had been holding up a collapsing wall and calling it dignity. For the first time she whispered, Lord, I am tired. It was not a polished prayer, but it was honest. And honest prayers often begin where proud prayers end. The next morning, Eleanor called Marcus. Her voice shook. Mr. Reed, this is Eleanor Whitmore. Yes, ma'am. I need to ask you something. Anything. She closed her eyes. How do I know your organization is real? Marcus paused, then laughed softly. That is a very wise question. He gave her the office number, the director's name, the website, and encouraged her to call Reverend Caleb before inviting anyone into her house. That mattered to Eleanor. A person trying to manipulate her would have rushed her. Marcus encouraged light, so she called the church, then the organization, then the city housing office. Everything checked out. 2 days later, Marcus returned, this time with Reverend Caleb and Eleanor's daughter Anna, whom the pastor had called after Eleanor finally gave permission. Anna walked into the house and immediately saw the bucket in the back hallway. Mom, she whispered. Eleanor looked down. I didn't want you to worry. Anna's eyes filled with tears. I would rather worry with you than let you suffer without me. Eleanor could not answer. Her son, Michael, arrived an hour later. He looked at the unpaid bills spread across the table. The eviction notice, the repair estimates, the medication receipts. He sat down as if his legs had failed him. Mom, why didn't you tell us? Eleanor's first instinct was to defend herself. Then she looked at Thomas's Bible, at his note, at Marcus standing quietly near the door, and she told the truth. Because I was ashamed. No one spoke. I thought needing help meant I had failed. Anna knelt beside her. No, Mom. Hiding made us lose the chance to love you. That sentence broke something open. Eleanor's story reveals a truth many people struggle to accept. Giving requires humility, but so does receiving. Galatians 6:9 says, Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. For years, Eleanor and Thomas had done good in quiet ways. They did not keep a record. They did not help Marcus and his mother, so that one day Marcus would return. That is not love. That is a transaction. But Scripture teaches that goodness planted in faith is never wasted. Sometimes the harvest returns in ways we could never plan. Sometimes it knocks on the door decades later, holding a clipboard, standing under a leaking porch roof. Proverbs 19:17 says that whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord. Thomas and Eleanor had never been rich, but they had been generous. And now Eleanor had to learn that the Lord is not ashamed to repay kindness through human hands. Then there is 2 Corinthians 12:9, where the Lord tells Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Weakness is not the enemy of faith. Pride is. Eleanor thought dignity meant needing nothing. But Christian hope teaches a different kind of dignity. A dignity that can say, "I need help," without surrendering worth. A dignity that can receive love without calling it humiliation. A dignity that understands grace flows both ways. There are seasons when God uses your hands to lift another person, and there are seasons when He uses another person's hands to lift you. Both require faith. The family meeting happened at Eleanor's kitchen table, the same table where Thomas had once prayed over meals, where children had done homework, where bills had been sorted, birthdays celebrated, and tears wiped away. Now the eviction notice sat in the center, no longer hidden. Marcus explained the options carefully. There were community repair grants, a senior housing advocate, a payment plan possibility, a church benevolence committee, a legal aid referral. No one solution fixed everything, but for the first time, there was a path. Michael leaned forward. "I can help with the past due taxes." Eleanor shook her head immediately. "No, I cannot let you." Anna took her hand. "Mom." Eleanor stopped. Marcus spoke gently. "Mrs. Whitmore, maybe this is not charity." She looked at him. "Maybe this is harvest." The room went still. Eleanor looked at Thomas's Bible, then at Marcus, then at her children. For decades, she had believed love meant being useful. Feeding, serving, helping, holding others together. But now love was asking her to sit still and receive. She began to cry. "I did not want to become a burden." Michael's voice broke. "You are not a burden. You are our mother." Anna said, "You taught us to care for people. Please let us care for you." Reverend Caleb bowed his head. "Can we pray?" Eleanor nodded. They gathered around the table. No dramatic miracle happened. No check fell from heaven. No debt vanished in a breath. But Eleanor did something almost as difficult as a miracle. She opened her hands. She stopped hiding, and she let herself be loved. The house did not become perfect. The roof still needed work. The porch still creaked. The budget still required painful conversations. Eleanor still lived on a fixed income, but she was no longer carrying the fear alone. Marcus connected her with legitimate resources for aging in place. The church helped repair the back bedroom ceiling. Michael and Anna created a schedule for groceries, appointments, and monthly finances, not to control Eleanor, but to walk with her. Reverend Caleb visited every Friday morning for coffee and prayer. At first, Eleanor apologized constantly. "I'm sorry for all this trouble." Each time, someone corrected her. Love is not trouble. Slowly, she began to believe it. One afternoon, Marcus returned to help repair the porch railing. Eleanor brought him lemonade. He smiled. "You don't have to serve me, Mrs. Whitmore." She looked toward Thomas's Bible on the table, then back at Marcus. "I know," she said, "but I can still love you." He laughed softly. "Yes, ma'am, you can." Months later, Eleanor placed a new note inside Thomas's Bible, beside his old one. "Thomas, you were right. I was too proud to ask, but God was kind enough to send someone who remembered. The house still stands, and so do I, not because I was strong enough to suffer alone, but because grace came back through the door. Maybe you know Eleanor's story. Maybe you are strong for everyone else. Maybe you are the one people call when they need prayer, food, money, advice, or comfort. But when you are the one in need, you hide. You say you are fine. You call fear privacy. You call pride dignity. You call loneliness strength. This story is not asking you to trust everyone. Wisdom matters. Safety matters. Discernment matters. But do not let shame lock the door against the very help God may be sending. The same grace that teaches us to give must also teach us to receive. Because sometimes Christian hope arrives not as a dramatic rescue, but as the courage to show someone the folded paper you have been hiding in the Bible. And sometimes, the harvest of the good you planted returns on the very day your pride almost keeps you from opening the door. If this story spoke to your heart, write the word hope in the comments. Let it be a simple prayer. Lord, teach me to give with humility and receive with humility when my season of need arrives. If this video helped you reflect, leave a like and subscribe for more Christian stories about faith, family, humility, healing, and biblical truth. And remember, dignity is not suffering alone. Sometimes dignity is letting love enter when God sends it to your door.